Hey everyone, welcome back to part 3 of week 1. As you can see, today we're actually getting to start making something in Ableton, so I'm sure you've all been looking forward to it. Now, we are working on the first project file, which I've included, so make sure you've downloaded that and you've got it open and it's all working fine. So you should see once you open this file that you have two audio tracks called loop 1 and loop 2, and you should see that they have something in there. If it's giving you an error regarding missing source files, please let me know ASAP. And I'll help you sort that out. Now I know I'm contradicting myself, and I said we weren't going to use arrangement view, that would be sticking in here, but just for ease of visibility, we are going to jump into the arrangement view today just for this exercise, and then we'll be jumping back again into the session view. So down the bottom here you can see I've got this MIDI track set up, which I've left empty on purpose. What we're going to do is I'm going to guide you through recreating both of these drum beats here. So loop 1 is an easy one, and then we have loop 2, which has a couple more sounds in it, but it's not going to be anything that we can't do. So first things first, this needs to be a drum rack. Right now it's just an empty MIDI track, so you can either drag drum rack into here or just have this drum kit selected and double click the drum rack. So we've got our drum rack down the bottom. Now let's just listen to this sound. So you can see here we've got 1 on and we've got our drum rack on. There's nothing in here yet, so it's not going to play that. Just going to play the first track. And loop is on, and you can see our markers here are set to this little time range, so it's just going to loop this over and over again. So we'll just have a listen, see what's in there, and then we're going to recreate that. Right, so if you did your homework on your drums or you already know what these sounds are, we've got a kick and we've got a snare. Those are the only two sounds in this pattern here, so it's quite easy. So what we're going to do is actually make our own. They don't have to be exactly the same sounds, we just need a kick and a snare. So I'm going to come over here to my samples, I'm going to type in kick, make sure I click on my samples. You can select any kick for this, but we'll try and get something kind of close. So I've just found this one here called DD Kick 8. I'm going to drag that into C1. Now I've got my kick. And now we need our snare. So I'm just going to come up the top here, type in snare. Spelt it weird, but it's fine. So it seems like capital letters do matter in spots, so let's make sure we just do it all lowercase. Same thing here, I'm just going to pick a snare that's kind of close to what's here, so I'm just going to listen to that. So it's a typical acoustic drum snare. So I found this one here, 2020 PH snare. Obviously I clicked this track, so I've lost my drum rack down here. What you do is come over here, double click our drum rack again, and you'll see it pop up. So I'm going to drag this snare right next to the kick here. So I've got my kick and my snare. Now, to make a new clip in here, obviously in the session view, we just double click. In the arrangement view, what we can do is highlight a section, and then we can either right click, go insert MIDI clip, or, yep, another shortcut. We're going to hold Command, Shift, and M, and that's Control, Shift, and M on the PC, and that will make a new MIDI clip for you. So now you can see we've got a MIDI clip down here, which we can put our sounds in. Now I've made a MIDI clip the length of 1 bar, so you can see up here, I've got 1 bar, 2 bars, 3 bars. I'm going to explain time signatures and beats and all that stuff in a second here. But you can see I've just created a clip for that length here. We're just going to work on this, and then we'll come over here and work on this bit. So they're almost the same, just with a little difference. So we're working on this first half. We've got kick, snare, kick, snare. So I'm going to double click my MIDI clip, make sure I got this up. Now, if you got a lot of little lines here, it's going to get quite confusing, because you can see when I double click, I can have a lot of little notes in here, and it can get quite messy quite quickly. So if I play that, it can get a bit confusing, especially for you new users. So what I recommend we do is we right click. We'll just set this to quarter notes for now, so 1/4. Now I'm going to quickly go over tempo. If you know all about this stuff, feel free to skip ahead, but Basically, when it comes to all these numbers that you see here, this is 1 bar, so you can see length here is 1 bar, and we can see that from here, we got 1 bar. We're at 120 BPM, and there are 4 beats in a bar. So if I loop this bar here, let me just put this on. I'm just going to change this quickly. Yours will be already set to this. I'm going to put the metronome on here. I'm just going to turn this off, turn both these sounds off. I'm going to play this. So you can hear there's that high pitch click. That means it's the start of each bar. So every time it's a high pitch one, it's a new bar. So you can hear that we got 4 beats in a bar at 120 BPM. So a beat is a quarter note. So if I have 4 kicks in here, I've got it set to quarter notes, so I can only draw quarter notes. I'm going to have 4 in there, and you'll hear it will be exactly the same pattern as what this metronome's doing once I turn this on. Now, if we want more notes, we can go to 1/8 notes, that's half now. So now there's 8 beats in a bar. So if I draw 8 beats in here, I'm just going to do this quickly. So you can hear now for this bar, there are 8 beats in there. So it's going double time to what the metronome's doing. So I can click this, go 16ths. Now there are 16 beats in this bar. You can hear it's getting quicker, and then you can go to 30 seconds, 64s, and so on and so forth. So when you're working with, let's say, house music or club music, typically you have the kick on each beat of the bar. So it would sound like this. Yeah, that's kind of just a quick little explanation about what we're actually looking at here. So now if we want to match this, if we listen to this, we've still got 4 beats in a bar, but it's switching between the kick and the snare. So the snare is on the 2 and the 4, and the kick is on the 1 and the 3. So because it's easy, because we can see it, what we can do is come back to our beat here. The kick is on the 1 and the 3, so I can just draw 1, double click in the 1 here, double click in the 3, and that will give me 2 notes. And all I have to do now is double click in the snare here for the 2 and the 4. And if I turn off the original, just listening to ours, and then turn off ours, just listen to the original, you can hear they're both the same now, if I have them both playing at the same time. So we've got the kick and the snare going now. Now you might have noticed while you were drawing these notes in, or while you're watching me draw them in, down the bottom here we have these little lines with a circle above them, and when I hover my mouse above it, you'll see the number 100 pop up the top there, just above the note. So what these little lines are the velocities of the notes. So I'll just make this bigger so you can see it properly. So you can see at the moment the velocity for all these notes are 100. Now, to make this simple, you can refer to the velocities as how hard the instrument is being played. So when we're working with samples like this, where we just dragged in our own samples into this drum kit here, the velocities will only affect the volume. So if I just turn this on, and I'll just mess with these velocities a little bit, you can see as I drag it down, click and hold it and drag it down, it's getting quieter, and how it's getting louder. But you can hear it's just the volume changing. If we actually take an Ableton drum kit, like a built-in instrument or drum kit, the velocity won't just affect the volume, it will actually change some characteristics about the sound as well. So I've brought in a drum kit down here, this kit ambient one, which is one that comes with Ableton. If you've got this pack here, the Session Drum Studio. And I'll just put these notes in here. I've drawn a snare in, but they're all at different velocities. So I've got one here down at 29, one that's cranked right up to 127, which is the max, and then just varying velocities. So I'm just going to play this so you can hear it. You can can hear it sounds much more realistic now, but obviously because it's a proper drum kit that comes with Ableton, it's not just a sample. But you can hear that when the velocity changes there, it's not just the volume getting louder and quieter. It's actually as if the snare is being hit harder. So the tone changes, the timbre changes, the characteristics of the snare change. Sounds a lot more realistic because when you do hit a snare harder and softer, the sound completely changes. It's not just a volume thing. So right down here, it just sounds like a little light tap. And right up here, you're hitting the snare as hard as you can. I'll just bring up another example for you to show you what I mean. Okay, so now I've got this top snare here, this top kit with this snare. They're all hitting as hard as they possibly can, 127. And this bottom kit here, exactly the same snare, but they're all hitting at 19 velocity-wise. So what I've done is on this really quiet one, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference if they were at different volumes. So to make it more prominent, I've actually brought up the volume of this quiet one, just the gain of it. So I haven't changed anything, just the gain. So it's a similar volume to this one here, but you'll hear now that the sound is completely different of the snare. So I'm going to play the top one. So that's our loud one, and I'm going to play the soft one now, at the same volume as this one. Yeah, so you can hear how even though they're the same volume now, because they're at completely different velocities, the sound itself has changed quite a bit. So I'm just going to get rid of this one. Yeah, I thought I'd cover that now quickly, just so you weren't wondering what those little things at the bottom were for the entire duration of while you're making drums. You can go in and mess with these if you want, play around with them. It's not necessary for this exercise, but when you jump into your own drums, this can be a handy way to mix things up a bit. So it's not just, doesn't sound robotic, it's like the same, everything's the same volume. So you can change the velocities of the drums, make it feel a little bit more human. But like I said, if you change the velocities on samples that you just bring in, so any, like samples in here, let's say you grab a kick or whatever. If you want to change the velocities of your samples, it's only going to affect the volume. It's not going to actually affect the character of the sound like a built-in Ableton drum kit would. Because the way Ableton builds some of these drum kits is they actually record real instruments being hit at different strengths. So they'll set up mics and record a snare being tapped and then one being hit really hard. And that's how you get that different character. And it's something called multi-sampling, which we'll cover in a later video. But yeah, for now, that's what these little red lines here at the bottom are. So now that we got that, we'll come over here, finish this beat. Let's do the second half. So let's listen to this second half. What I'm going to do is drag select over here, hit Command L or Control L on the PC to loop this section. So you highlight a section, hit Command L, Control L to loop a specific part of a track. That's in the arrangement view. So I'm going to listen to this part. So it's very similar, except now we've got two kicks here. Because it's quite similar, what we can do is just copy what we've already got here to over here. Now to do that, I'm just going to select this clip and go Command D or Control D on the PC to duplicate, and that'll just drag it straight over. You can also go, I'll just delete this. You can also go Command C to copy or Control C on the PC, and then Command V or Control V on PC to paste it. That way you can kind of paste it anywhere you want. It doesn't have to be straight after that clip, which is what duplicate does. So now we're going to copy this section here. Instead of turning these on and off, I'm just going to use the solo now. So that's this little S here. So this little S means I'm only soloing and listening to this track here. You can see it's all the same if I listen to ours, solo ours, except there's a second kick here. Now, because I've got it on quarter notes, I'm not going to be able to put that in until I switch to eighth notes. So I'm going to have to switch to eighth notes. Then what I can do is just drag my mouse here until I get this little bracket icon, closed bracket. I'm just going to drag that back and snap it to there, to the eighth note, and then I can just double click here and add another kick in. Now if I listen to that, You can hear now it's exactly the same as this one. Sorry, something I should have actually mentioned, not sure if I mentioned this, but if you aren't hearing your sounds when you double click, let me just turn this back on. So you can hear that every time I click, I can hear my sounds, and if I click these, I can hear my sounds. If you can't hear it, it's because you've got this little headphone icon off. So just make sure that's blue, and you'll be able to hear your sounds. I know quite a few people that have run into that issue, and they start freaking out and thinking that the sounds aren't working, but it's actually just this little headphone icon here. So yeah, that is the first loop done and dusted. If we listen to it all now, we'll listen to the original, so I'm just going to solo it. And I'll listen to ours. So you should have exactly the same thing, hopefully. So it's quite straightforward. Now we're going to listen to this loop too. So to play from the start, you can either just click this whole bar, which will play from here, or you can just bring your mouse over here, click at the start. Or let's say if you've just played it and you stopped it here, you can double click this stop icon just to make sure you're back at the start. Another way I'm playing and pausing without actually moving my mouse up here is actually I'm just using my spacebar, which is something that you should get used to very quickly. Start using it straight away. Every time you want to play a section, use your spacebar. It's a lot quicker for workflow, and it's just easier. So I want to recreate this second loop now, so I'm just going to listen to this. So you can hear it's a little bit more complicated. We've got a couple of extra sounds in there. So one extra sound we have is a closed hi-hat, and the other one is a low tom. So what I'm going to do is, we've already got a couple sounds in here. I'm just going to duplicate this kit. So I'm going to select this track and hit Command D or Control D. And that'll give us another one down here, because I don't want to ruin this pattern that we've already got. So let's see what this one's doing. Again, I'm just going to work on this first half here. So I'm just going to work on the first bar. To zoom in and out, if you move your mouse up here, you got this little magnifying glass where you can click and hold. If you drag down, it will zoom in. If you drag up, it will zoom out. And then if you move it left and right to see where you are as well. So I'm just going to drag it up and move across. So just so that I fill my screen a bit more with this first bar. So if I turn all these off, turn that original one off as well. So when you're recreating a beat, I recommend you listen to one element at a time. So we're gonna get the kick right first, and then we'll move on to the snare, and then the hi-hat, and then the tom. So you can hear we've got two kicks at the start, and another kick here. So if we come to our MIDI clip, we have to switch to eighth notes because we're in quarters. Just going to put another kick here. And now our kick's exactly the same. And because the snare is actually the same in this one, we'll just listen to that. Yep, there's only a snare on the 2 and the 4. We don't actually have to change ours because we've already done that here from the last one. So we've got one on the 2 and the 4. Now, these extra little sounds, we need a hi-hat. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm just going to type in hat. So I found this closed hat here. You might have one the same if you got all the packs. 9 ins closed hat 1. You can choose any though, it doesn't really matter for this. Now to add more sounds to this drum kit, I have to double click this instrument here. That'll bring up the drum rack again. So what I can do is just drag this hat in. Now I know that the other sound we needed, if I hit play, is a low tom. So what I can do up here is type in tom. Yeah, one of these is fine. I'll just grab this one here. Remember to bring my drum kit up. And I'm just going to drag that in the 4th box down here. So now, if I unsolo this, I've got the kick, snare, snare, hat, and tom. So let's listen to this hat pattern. So it's quite quick. So if we actually just count how many hats are in there in this one bar, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8. So that means it's going to be eighth notes. So if I set this to 8, it means we're going to have one hat in each of these little cubes. Now to save me from double clicking and putting it separately in each time, I can just do a couple, drag select over those two, make sure your selection goes to the end of that note, and then hit Command D or Control D to duplicate. And you can just keep hitting it until you fill that line. So if we listen to what we've got now, we'll solo ours. So now our hat pattern is the same as what we got up there. So the last sound is that tom. It only happens once here. So that we know it needs to happen here on ours. So we got our tom here. Oh, let me just unsolo that. Turn ours on. So we've got our tom there. So we know that it needs to happen there. Now if we solo ours, it's exactly the same. Okay, so that was the first half. Now let's look at what this second half is doing. So I'm just going to loop this bit. So it's actually all exactly the same except the kick's different. So again, what I can do, I'm just going to delete this one. I can select this one, hit Command D or Control D to duplicate that over. Now make sure you double click this one so that this one's popped up, because if they're exactly the same, it can be difficult to know which one you're actually messing around with. So make sure you're in this one. So all that's happened here is that there's an extra kick here, which is here on ours. So I'm going to halve this note. Turn it on so we can hear it. And put another kick in here. Let's listen to this top one. Actually, one thing this doesn't have is a second kick here, so we can get rid of that ours on ours as well. To get rid of it, I can just double click it or just highlight it and delete, either or. Listen to the top one, and then listen to ours. It's all exactly the same now. Play it at the same time. So there we go. That's both of those drum loops we've copied. We managed to create our own drum kits using the drum rack, put our own sounds in, and we've replicated the easy one and replicated the slightly harder one as well with 4 sounds in it. So I hope you found this lesson useful. It's a good base to start out with, so now you can start putting some beats together, some sounds together. That way you can get your ideas out in an easy manner. So that is basically week 1. Over the next video, I'm going to go over what I want you to do this week homework wise, and also what we're going to be covering the next week. So I'll see you in the next video.